All right, we have got a really exciting episode here of the Unstoppable series. We are here with Erwin McManus. This is Amanda McVey from Upgrade Labs. Erwin, thank you for coming. We're so excited to have you.
I am so excited to be here. This has already been an amazing day.
I know. So we're at the 6th Annual Biohacking Conference. You've already got to experience a little of the day. What's some of the exciting things that you've already seen?
Well, the first thought I had is, how in the world did I miss the first 5? But I've heard this is the best one.
Yeah, it's been absolutely spectacular. And you're also a Labs member.
I am a guinea pig. And, I'm 60 years old. I refuse to slow down. I play basketball all the time. I love sports. I love athletics. I have a really high value for physical health, emotional health, mental health, spiritual well-being. And I'm always looking for the cutting edge technology. I'm looking for any way I can get an advantage. I have a 30-year-old son, Aaron, who is just an amazing human and a really great athlete. And I want to be able to compete with him until I take my last breath. So I found you guys in Santa Monica at first.
Yep.
And I was driving all the way to Santa Monica to begin to experience some of the different technologies. And some of it was I needed a way to recover faster. And then some of it is I wanted to find ways to give me a little more advantage. And I found that the things you guys offer, the technologies that you've discovered have helped me on both ends.
Amazing. So I remember the basketball piece. I saw you in the float tank. You came out and you're like, I'm ready to kick some butt now.
And it worked. The first time I used that float tank, I went right from there to the basketball court.
Yep, I remember.
And literally from the first shot, all my three-pointers were dropping, and I was addicted. And I don't know if this is voodoo, magic, or technology. I don't care. I just know it works.
It's all of the above. And so now, for people who don't know you, besides knowing that you're wonderful at basketball, can you tell us a little bit about your background and who you are and why we invited you to the Upgrade Conference to be actually one of our keynote speakers?
Well, it's a real honor to be invited. And to close the day out after Dave Asprey opens it is, to me, an incredible privilege. I'm actually an immigrant from El Salvador. I came here when I was a kid, and I never knew my real father. My mom did the best she could raising us up. She was remarried. And so I went through a lot of emotional trauma. I only begin there just saying that a part of the wholeness of who you are is even your emotional well-being and finding who you are and your identity. And so a huge part of my own personal journey was always trying to figure out if my life has any significance, if there's any intention behind being here on this planet. I was desperately afraid that I would just sort of disappear into the backdrop of anonymity, of really just being mediocre, of just being a person who has no distinct uniqueness or gifting or talent. And I think I'm like a lot of people who wondered if we were just the ones who lost the genetic lottery. Everybody else is a genius. Everyone else is talented. Everyone else has something to contribute to the world. And now I look back on my life, and I just wrote my 10th book. The Way of the Warrior just came out a couple of weeks ago. And I've been to probably over 60, 70 countries around the world. And I've lived a life of my dreams. And I've been in the fashion industry, in the film industry. I've worked as a futurist. And I have this beautiful community in Los Angeles called Mosaic. It's a church we started on the corner of Hollywood Boulevard and La Brea. And I mean, frankly, it feels like you wake up, you have a dream, and by the time you go to sleep, that dream's already becoming a reality. And I love being here because I really believe in the unlimited capacity of human potential. I think, whether you're coming from a scientific perspective or from a spiritual perspective, I think you end up on the same road. Because I believe every human being is created in the image of God, that every human being has a unique intention, that they've been created with purpose and destiny. And I feel like my life mission is just to unlock that greatness inside of every human being. I tell everyone there's a hero within you waiting to be awakened. Just don't sleep through your dreams. Allow that greatness to incubate and then to become you.
Wow. And so thank you for that. And we parallel a lot of those beliefs here at Labs, and how we unlock humans is through our technology. And you have been so powerful at unlocking humans, and you've got this amazing community around you. What are some of the techniques that you guys use to help wake people up to this greatness within?
Well, frankly, one of the things I thought was so interesting is this morning when Dave was speaking, he started talking about gratitude. And 20 years ago, I wrote a book called Uprising on human transformation. And one of the core principles I talked about there was gratitude. And back then, gratitude seemed like almost a hyper-spiritualized or sort of a superficial approach toward life change. But neuroscience now knows, in fact, calls gratitude the lubricant of the brain.
Yes.
That when a person is ungrateful, their brain becomes rigid and unchanging. And when a person is grateful, their brain actually becomes pliable and adaptive. And your ability to problem solve, to imagine, to create is literally physiologically connected to your decision to live a life of gratitude or to live a life of ungratefulness.
Yes. Yes.
And so one of the first things I would tell people is be grateful. Look at the beauty and wonder of life. Get up every day and find something to be thankful for. And you know, for a person like myself, when my life is rooted deeply in my own spiritual life, and there's this whole dynamic called worship, and really worship is just an expression of gratitude. And I think it's so interesting that what we would sometimes put as antiquated religion is now advanced scientific technology. Wake up in the morning, be grateful for life, look for beauty, look for wonder, allow yourself to be open to all the possibilities of life, and you will actually begin to change the way your brain operates.
You're saying something that's really interesting, because you're referencing this, what used to be religion is now scientific. Knowing that you're, a pastor and you've got Mosaic, do you feel like now is a time where more secular society is going to be open to receiving these types of messages because there is more science attached to it?
I think so. I think that coming out of the last 500 years, many faith-based people were terrified science was going to deconstruct faith and make it irrelevant. What's actually happening is that we are discovering more and more that Newton was wrong, that Einstein was almost right, and that we're on our way to seeing that reality is much more connected to a spiritual core, that everything is energy. I mean, saying everything is energy sounds like some kind of superstitious, magical view of the universe, not just a generation ago.
Yes.
This idea that matter and energy were separate was science, but it wasn't faith.
Yeah.
See, faith said, no, everything is spirit. Everything is spiritual. Everything is energy. So I actually think that science is becoming intensely spiritual because human beings are more than just flesh and blood.
Yes.
And when you think about the power of love, I mean, is there anything more transcendent than love? Love we should have evolved out of love, because love doesn't make us more likely to survive. Love makes us more endangered, because when you love someone, you don't run from the saber-toothed tiger. You stand between her and the tiger, and you die for her. It's the guy who's not in love, just interested in her, who survives that battle. Love actually makes a fool of you. I mean, love endangers you. You sacrifice everything for love, and yet love is the core of being human. I think there are things that cannot be explained just through human evolution that are really transcendent, and they're the most beautiful parts of who we are.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm glad I wore my love over
love everything. You see, there you are.
Love over everything.
Oh, love over everything. Yeah. I like that.
So you referenced your newest book. Will you talk to us about it, The Way of the Warrior?
Yeah, absolutely. I wrote this book, The Way of the Warrior, an ancient path to inner peace.
Yeah.
And a huge part of the motivation for the book for me is that we have an epidemic in our culture of depression and anxiety. 22-year-olds struggling with panic attacks. They're self-medicated or medically prescribed to try to deal with stress and worry. And we're not really solving the problem. We're just trying to abate the symptoms.
Yes.
And so I wrote this book because I felt the most important conversation we could have right now is about inner peace. And then we have, in our society, we have anger and rage. We have terrorism and wars. We have a level of violence we could have never imagined. There's a time we were afraid of the battle lines. Now we're afraid of our elementary schools. And I felt like what was going on here is that, I mean, think about how amazing humans are. We're the creatures, the species. I mean, the humans are one of my favorite species. And, humans discovered how to harness fire and how to control light. Humans figured out how to break the atmosphere and travel into space and go under the water and travel in the oceans. We're the species that invented the telephone and the television, the internet. We're the only species that invented pizza and donuts. I mean, and yet we as a species have not figured out how to bring world peace.
Yeah.
How is it possible that we are so brilliant and so inventive, we're ingenious, but we can't bring world peace? And the reason we cannot is because you cannot bring what you do not have. The reason the world is at war is because we're at war. The reason there are wars that rage around us is that there are wars that rage within us. And we will never have world peace until we have inner peace. So I wrote this book on a very intimate level to help each individual find inner peace. But I also wrote it to try to bring world peace, because we'll never have inner peace until we have, or world peace until we have inner peace. And this is what this book is about. How do you deal with anxiety and stress and worry and fear and depression? How do you deal with all the chaos and turmoil within us? And I know for you guys at Upgrade that you're not just worried, you're not just concerned about physical health. You're dealing with a holistic person.
Yep.
If your body looks great and you're struggling with depression, you're not okay.
Yes. 100%. And so everything we do at Labs is from the inside out.
That's right.
So can you define the warrior for me, and then maybe even contrast it to what you reference as a fool in the book?
Well, I knew using the language of the warrior would be a little bit controversial, because there is so much violence and there's so much fear of terrorism and all around us.
Yeah.
But I love reclaiming language. And the book is broken down into 8 codes. And the first code in the way of the warrior fights only for peace. And I wanted to reframe what it means to be a warrior. Because so many people feel so inadequate when they're dealing with their own inner struggles. They feel like they're broken, or they're cowards. And when you're talking about dealing with anxiety or stress or depression, you just feel like there's just something wrong with you. Yeah. And what I wanted to say to people is, look, when you're honest enough to admit you have an inner struggle, when you're honest enough to say, I'm struggling with depression or fear or stress or anxiety, to me, you're not a coward, you're a warrior. So I wanted to reclaim this language and say, the most courageous thing you can do is deal with the battle within, so that you have something to give the world. The world desperately needs people who are fully alive.
Yes.
And when you are fully alive, you have something beautiful you can bring to the world. And so I chose this language because peace never comes without a fight. And your inner peace will not come by accident. It will not come to you passively. It will not come to you if you're always a victim hoping that someone will change your life. Inner peace will only come when you decide to go to war for you.
And now we invited you here to talk about fear today.
Absolutely.
And I feel like you have a lot of powerful insights on fear, particularly how our fears literally set the boundaries of our lives.
Absolutely.
Maybe talk to me a little about that.
Sure. First of all, I'm an expert on fear. If there was a genetic code for people who never fear, I did not get it. I grew up so afraid of everything. I was afraid of dogs. I was afraid of roller coasters. I was afraid of the dark. I was afraid of girls. I was afraid. I mean, every first in my life, I lived with fear. And so I was one of those guys that just seemed paralyzed by his own fear. And that's what became more and more clear to me, that your fear establishes the boundaries of your freedom. So if you're afraid of heights, you stay low.
Yes.
If you're afraid of crowds, you stay alone. If you're afraid of the dark, you stay in the light. And you may not realize it, but your fear is an illusion of limitation. And so then you begin to realize that your freedom is on the other side of your fears. And so oftentimes what happens is that you hit this wall of fear. And you think this is your internal world telling you you cannot go any further. But if you change your mind, I made a shift in my life. I realized, I'm a coward, and I'm going to live a coward's life if I don't change the way I engage fear. I made a decision in my life. Whenever I was afraid of something, I was going to move toward it rather than away from it. That I was going to use fear as my internal compass of the direction I would go. And now I look at my life. I mean, I've walked the streets of Damascus, Syria, and Islamabad, Pakistan. I've been in the middle of Egypt and in Istanbul, Turkey. I've gone to the most dangerous places in the world. I used to call my son, poor kid, he's probably psychologically damaged all his life. I would call him and say, I'm in Istanbul. It's 4 a.m. I just want to tell you the last place I am, just in case they can't find me.
Oh, goodness.
And I would go to the most dangerous places in the world and experience the most beautiful moments of my life. You cannot find the most extraordinary, warm, loving people in Damascus if you're afraid to walk the streets. You cannot break your fears of people who are different than you, or places that are unknown to you, or experiences that are new to you, if you're not willing to step into them. So I tell people, look, start somewhere easy.
Yeah.
Like my wife, it took me.
You're afraid of your wife?
Oh, no. Well, I am. Actually, I am afraid of my wife. I just own that. We've been married 35 years. For 32 of those years, she refused to try oysters. She just would not try oysters. And she won't eat sushi. She won't eat so many different foods. Mm-hmm. And so one day she finally just broke down and had oysters with me. And they became her favorite food that moment. And I'm like, you just wasted 58 years of your life afraid of something that was actually going to bring you more pleasure than you could have ever imagined. And I try to tell people, look, if you're afraid of things, start by food. Just eat something that you're not used to eating.
Yeah.
Eat in a restaurant, eat Chinese food or Thai food or sushi, or just try something you've never tried before. You'll begin to reprogram your inner world. You'll begin to reprogram your mind to not be afraid of things that you do not know and have never experienced. Little by little, you can actually begin to create an entirely new life and push out the parameters of your freedom.
So that's actually a really amazing, actionable tip, and I think many people who are listening would be super excited to try some new foods. Now, but have you seen this technique applied in other bigger ways? Like, you've traveled to unsafe places and really stretched the boundaries of your own fear, but people in your community and your family having like stories of them stretching their own limits and walking, using the compass directly into their fear.
Well, absolutely. I think it's a huge part of who Mosaic is. You know, I mean, our community is a faith community. It's built on the teachings and person of Jesus. And one of the things that, you know, it's odd, but that's central to the Christian faith is sacrifice. And to believe that not even death has power over you. And so when you start building that kind of environment where you say to people, look, you have so many preconceived limitations that simply do not exist. Yeah. I'm going to talk about 3 tonight. I'm going to talk about fear being a limitation, pain being a limitation, and failure being a limitation. Yeah. And just like your freedom is on the other side of your fears, your greatness is on the other side of your pain.
Whoa, okay.
And your future is on the other side of your failures. So we have this recurring narrative at Mosaic where we find so many people. I've had people who were CEOs of major corporations email me and tell me, I just quit my job because I'm at the top of my game and I'm at the top of my field and I am unhappy. And I've never really wanted this. I've had other dreams, but I never had the courage to pursue them. Yeah. See, sometimes pursuing a dream requires that you leave your success. It's so much easier to leave your failure. Because when you fail, you're always looking for a new dream.
Yep.
But I think the most debilitating barrier to the freedom and to the life that most people who live in Los Angeles, I think in many major cities have, is that they have just enough success to sell out their own souls.
Whoa.
And to sell out their own future. I tell so many leaders, you're way too cheap. You just sold out your future for less than 6 figures. I mean, if you're not making 8 or 9 figures, what in the world is causing you to hesitate from leaving what you're doing to pursuing what you long to do?
That makes tons of sense. That's also another really good tip. So, okay, there's a couple amazing contradictions that I'm hearing here, and you know, the first one is you got to go right into your fear to find this freedom.
Absolutely.
Something else that I'm hearing is that you have to go to war to find peace, right?
Yes, you do. Just like in marriage.
Yep.
Our marriage is a good war. See, the way marriages ruin is not through fights. It's actually through unspoken treaties where neither fights for the other any longer.
Oh my.
And so I have chosen to always fight for my wife.
Wow.
To fight for her. And when I see her, because let's be really straight up, 35 years of marriage, there are huge highs and lows. And I have to fight to reclaim her love. I have to fight to reclaim her affection. Yeah. I realize I have to fight to make sure I'm still the guy making her laugh. I'm still the one that she's enjoying when it's just her time off. And a lot of us, we want people to fight for us, but we're not often willing to put the energy in to fight for them. Yeah. And then we have fought for each other. throughout our marriage. In fact, she knows I'm going to do this leap of faith.
Yes.
And I thought I was jumping off the roof of the building onto the parking lot. And so I said, I'm going to be jumping off the roof today. And
Thank you for still coming, even though that's what you thought was happening here.
You know, I was trying to remember years ago, I played an assassin and a pilot, and they taught me how to jump out of through glass and how to fall. So I was trying to remember how to do that. I was much younger then, though. So my wife sends me a text. Okay, have you jumped yet? Are you still alive? And she goes, do you want a massage or should I just meet you at the hospital? and I think a part of the beauty of it is that she fights for the life I long to have. And I fight for the life she longs to have. And so sometimes we're in different places in the world at the same time.
Yeah.
She'll be in Malawi working with villages and tribal chiefs, bringing healthcare and education and water and agricultural intelligence to a community so that they can have a future. And I'll be in the other part of the world in Singapore working with executives and you know, dealing with people who are going to affect cultures and businesses and you know, they don't even look like they're the same thing. If you're dealing with the top 1% of influencers in the world, you're dealing with people who are highly impoverished and overshadowed and overlooked in the world. But we're both pursuing our intention, and we both celebrate that.
I was curious about that with all the places that you've seen on Earth, and you know, what are some of the big lessons that you've picked up from being outside of America and the people and the similarities that we share? So,
well, I'll tell you, one of the great lessons I've learned from people who achieve extraordinary things in every culture in the world is that no two people are the same, but they all find their uniqueness and live in that rhythm. And so if you look at, let's say, 20 people who are expressing some level of genius in their life, you'll think these people have nothing in common, except the one thing they have in common is they all know the thing that makes them unique, and they don't apologize for it anymore.
How do you think people figure that out? Because I think that I understand what you're saying when you recognize somebody who's completely in the flow and just doing what they were put here to do. But so many of us walk around with our shell on, doing the things we think we're supposed to be doing. Like what releases somebody to be themselves and express their genius?
It's an interesting dynamic because usually the thing you're great at, you do not know you're great at it.
Yep.
Because it just feels normal to you.
Ah, got it.
So sometimes it's by looking at other people and going, why aren't they doing that? And there's a little bit of, you know, judgmentalism in there. You're going, how come everyone else isn't doing that?
Yep.
And you have to one day have this moment of self-awareness going, oh, it's because I have this unexpected ability to do this easily or to do it well. So the things that you grow fastest in with the least amount of effort are usually the things where there's a foreshadowing of greatness. And there is no greatness that comes without hard work. So I think one of the mythologies is if I'm naturally great at something, it should come easy. But if you look at Kobe Bryant, or if you look at Picasso, if you look at Tiger Woods, or whoever you're looking at, if it's Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, their greatness never came easy. But they had so much passion and intention for what they were great at that they broke through that level of sacrifice to the greatness.
Got it.
So what I say to people is, look, if you just like the outcome, that's not your destiny. That's just envy. When you love the hard work of the process, then you're getting closer to finding what you're created to do.
Wow. Yep.
And so I love to write, and I love words. And I mean, I'm sitting down with our publisher, explaining to them, when you edit my books, you have to pay attention to the musicality behind the words. A sentence may only have 7 words in it on purpose. You can't edit it and remove one of those words because there's a rhythm, a syncopation. If the editor can't hear the music, then he cannot touch the language. And I love words. They explode off the page for me. They create images and imagination. And that's one of the reasons I know that I'm born to be a writer.
Yep.
And I love telling stories that pull people into their own story.
Do you do something to prepare yourself to write? Like, how do you get in state before you create?
What I do that I think is most important is live. Because I don't know how, people always ask me, how can I become a better communicator? And I go, everyone wants to learn how to speak at a higher level, but no one wants to learn how to live at a deeper level. And if you want to write at a higher level or communicate at a higher level, you have to be willing to live at a deeper level. you have to see the world in a new way if you're going to learn a new way of communicating or a new way of writing. And so one of the things I do is I just experience life, and I experience people. I think the most valuable resource on this planet is the beauty and wonder of people.
Yeah.
So I travel the world and I just absorb all of their genius, and I listen to their stories, and I try to see the world through their perspective, and it changes me. And so every time I meet another person, every time I'm with someone like you, Amanda, I'm different because of that. So in that sense, I'm greedy. I want to learn from every single human being on the planet, and then absorb that and make it a part of who I am.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. And now, this is all about being unstoppable. We think that you're unstoppable, but do you remember the first time you met somebody that you felt was truly unstoppable, or who represents your definition of it?
Wow, that's such a great question. I wish you had given me that question before the interview. No.
Oh, because you've met too many people who are amazing, right?
Because no, you do meet so many people. You
Yeah.
asked me the first person.
Yeah.
You know, I think the first person I ever met that I thought was unstoppable was my grandfather. I'm in El Salvador. It's a really dangerous country. It had the highest murder rate in the world for so many years. And so my grandfather taught me how to play chess when I was 3 years old. So while other kids are running around the streets playing whatever ball, I'm inside of a house playing chess.
Yep.
and I move 5 moves or 6 moves, and my grandfather checkmates me right away. And I said, Papi, let me have a move. And he said, when you can earn a move, you can have a move. He was ruthless. And so, by the time I'm 6 or 7, I have 10 moves. And at 8 years old, I'm able to move 15 or 20 moves. By the time I'm 10, I'm able to move 30 or 40 moves. But what he taught me, he taught me the most unusual things. I was probably 5 years old when he gave me this map, and he said, the Asians migrated across the Bering Strait, came across North America to Latin America.
Yeah.
This is who we are. This is our heritage. He said, well, now you're going to go to America, or actually you're going to go to the United States. And they're going to say they're Americans, but America's a continent, and they think they own the whole continent. And but you're as much of an American as they are because you're from Central America. And then he told me, he goes, and when you get there, they're going to call you an Indian. And he said, but don't let them define you by their own mistakes, because Christopher Columbus thought he was in India, but he was not in India. And so we have been defined by a European's mistake. And so what he taught me was, never let someone else tell you who you are. And you stop and step back and ask yourself, who are you? He would say things when I would be leaning against a wall. He'd say, don't lean against that wall. And I would say, why? And he goes, because it's a sign of weakness. He said, stand erect, stand straight. Yeah. And all these subtleties that my grandfather taught me, and I thought, this man can do anything. He can and he probably couldn't do everything, and he probably had so many failures in his life. It didn't matter. You asked me the first person I thought was unstoppable. Yeah. But let me tell you, if I have a moment,
of course,
why he's that first person. My original name is not Erwin McManus. I'm not Irish or German. And it's all an alias when my mom remarried someone in creative underground economies. And so he had an alias, and we all had an alias at the same time. And I went to El Salvador, and I said, Papi, I need a new first name. I need a good American name, because your name actually matters. It's amazing. If your name is Jason or whatever, and everyone sees you differently. Yeah. And so my name was not really well received. And so I said, Papi, I need a new name. But he didn't know a good American name. I just wanted to be called John or Robert. I just wanted a name that just fit in, Sean or Dave, right? And my grandfather starts pacing in Spanish, saying, a name, un nombre pues. And he goes, it has to be the name of a leader. I'm 10. It has to be the name of a genius. It has to be the name of someone who shapes history. And then he'd been studying World War II history. And he said, su nombre es Erwin. I'd never heard that name in my whole life. He couldn't even pronounce it. I said, ¿Qué, papi? He said, Erwin. He named me after Erwin Rommel, Hitler's general over North Africa. So now I'm basically a Nazi, right? With his name, although he actually never was a Nazi. I didn't know that till later. And he named me Erwin. My brother was named after Alexander the Great. So imagine having a brother named Alexander, and now your name is Erwin. And it was always an alias. It was actually never my name. But you know why I couldn't change it? Because I was a straight D student first through 12th grade. I was in a psychiatric chair by the time I was 12 years old. I was in and out of a hospital because I was so psychologically broken. I was 14th string, never first string. I had no perceivable talent or gifting or ability or uniqueness. I couldn't change my name because there was only one time in my life someone looked at me and said, "You want an ordinary name. You want a name that just allow you to disappear in the backdrop of anonymity."
Yeah.
He goes, "But if I'm going to give you a name, that name has to be a name that personifies greatness and genius and someone who's a leader and someone who will make an impact in the world." And I felt if I gave up the name, I would be giving up what he's spoken to my life in that moment.
Wow.
You know who we think are unstoppable? The people who see greatness in us.
Well, with that, thank you. That is so beautiful. And, you know, I'm thinking there's 1,300 people here today. I don't have all of their phone numbers, but if we could send them a text right now from you, what would that text message say?
Wow, the future is waiting for those with the courage to create it.
Amazing.
I have to say, hey, if somebody wants to know more, they can go to my website, erwinmcmanus.com.
Love that.
And if they want to pick up The Way of the Warrior, they can go to our website, or they can go to Amazon or to any amazing bookstore across the country.
Absolutely.
And I'm just so honored to be a part of this event.
Thank
and
you.
I love the fact that you guys are on the cutting edge of the future. You know, the past is already behind us, so together we're creating a future that humanity desperately needs.
Thank you. I'm so glad we found each other.
Me too.
Thanks so much,
Thank you
Erwin.
so much, Amanda.
Take care.